Good morning, fourth grade. Happy Tuesday. Today we're going to focus on how we can compare decimals using greater than, less than, or equal to symbols. So the problem we see on the board is just a review of just two numbers, and we're going to go ahead and insert our greater than, less than, or equal to symbol. We read this number as 104, 106. So which symbol would we put inside to compare these two numbers? 104 is less than 106. Okay. We could also read this as 106 is greater than 104. Okay. But please make sure you're reading either from left to right with the correct symbol, or just restate it and write 106 first with the symbol with the greater than, and then the 104. Okay. All right. We know that when we are looking at these numbers, okay, we first have to realize they both have 3 digits, and because they both have 3 digits, they both are in the hundreds place. Both hundreds place digit is the same, and because they're the same, we move on to the next place value, which is the tens place, and again, they are the same still. And because they are the same, we continue to go down the place value chart and now into the ones place. And this is now what we're comparing. Because the hundreds and the tens place are the same, we're now left to compare only the ones place. So just comparing the 4 and the 6, that's essentially the question. 4 is less than 6. So therefore, 104 is less than 106. Okay. Again, just a quick review on what we're working on, and that's comparing. This is our comparison sentence, but now we're going to go ahead and use our decimals in the process. All right, I'm going to do a quick pause so I can show you something. All right, so we're going to take a look, and we know that we're using greater than, less than, or equal to compare our decimals. This would read 5/10 is greater than 4/10. Means that 5/10 is greater than 4/10. So this symbol lets us know that it is greater than. Okay, same thing here. 4/10 less than symbol, 5/10 means that 4/10 is less than 5/10. Okay, I know you guys know that, but I'm just saying that again. All right, you can compare 5/10 and 4/10 in a place value chart. Again, this place value chart is very helpful, especially if you're not yet comfortable and memorized with the order in which we have our place value system. Okay, we know that the decimal says and it separates our whole numbers and our numbers less than one whole. Okay, to the left of the decimal starts with ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, and so on and so forth. And then to the right of our decimal, we start with our tenths, hundredths, and so on. This is as far as we're going to go today, though. Okay, and we can read this. You don't say the 0. If there is no value other than 0, you don't say the number. Okay, you only say it if it has a value of at least 1 or more whole, and then you say the and. So we're skipping this because we don't have any value in our whole, in our ones place. So we start with this number, 50 hundredths, which can also be read as 5/10. Same here, not saying our ones or decimal. 4/10 or 40 hundredths. All right. So when we compare the places from left to right, as you do with whole numbers, the ones are the same, okay? And so you look to the tenths. So what that means is if there are, just like we had our very first problem, the hundreds place and our tens place had the same number. So we look to our next place value, which was the ones place, and that was the only two that we were comparing because those were the only two that were different. All right. So because they only have one place value, they're both in the ones place. Okay, just looking at this here, the 5 and the 4. Because there is only one place value and they're both in the ones place, we're comparing 5 and 4. And we know that 5 is greater than 4. Sometimes you're going to come across where you have more than one number. You have 0, you have 5, you have 0, you have 4. Okay, You have more than one number, so what you're going to have to do is take a look. You have to make sure they both have the same numbers or same amount of numbers, and they both have a 0 and a decimal, 0 and a decimal. So you're not comparing that part because they have that in common. So they're moving on to the next place value. Okay? So now we're comparing the 5/10 versus our 4/10. Again, we're not comparing 0 and because those are the things that they have in common. And because they have that in common, we're moving on to the place value chart, always going from left to right, and comparing now our 5/10 and our 4/10. 5/10 is greater than 4/10. All right, but here's a situation. So just having a random person. All right, so but what if Casey's bottle of water was larger than Keely's bottle? Then the comparison wouldn't work and make sense, right? So if we're comparing 5/10 here, she drank 5/10 of her water bottle. Casey drank 4/10 of her water bottle. But here, take a look. Even though they're still in the tenths, what happens if Casey's bottle is just substantially larger in total than Keely's? Then it doesn't quite compare and show the actual comparison to be true. So, with this visual in mind, comparing decimals is like comparing fractions. When you compare fractions or decimals, you must have the same size whole. So what that's meaning is that whatever you're comparing, if you're comparing two water bottles and both girls drinking 5/10 of it or 4/10 of it, both bottles have to be the same size to be able to compare it. Both have to be the same size to compare it. Okay? That should kind of bring us back to the understanding that we have to be able to add or subtract fractions with common denominators. That has to have the same amount of numbers in order to get to your whole, right? So you can't compare these two. You can't say she drank more because that is untrue, because even though she drank 5/10 of her water bottle, 4/10, I know it's number-wise is less, but if you look at the volume of how much she has had to drink, then this tells us that Casey actually was able to drink more. But we know that the numbers have to be using out of the same size whole. Okay. All right. We're going to do a couple of practice problems to make sure we're understanding what that means exactly. All right, so again, using this place value chart that I made up very quickly, but should look very familiar. If we have two very similar numbers, okay, starting from left to right, and if we notice, I notice a shadow. I apologize. I thought I could get rid of that shadow, but it's pretty dark outside, so I'm going to just continue. All right, so starting from left to right, I see that in our ones place, both numbers have the same 0 place value number, okay? And then moving on to our decimal point, it is right there positioned in the same spot. And then as we move further down our place value chart, in our tenths place, again, same number. So we're not comparing any of these parts yet because they all have that same number, okay? But what we are going to do, and then now looking into our hundredths place. So now that we're looking at our hundredths place, we see that finally there is a difference. So this is the number that we are going to compare. So if we take a look at the 4 and the 5, obviously we know that 5 is the greater number. So what we would say is 35 hundredths is greater than 34 hundredths. Okay, so again, we're using the place value chart just to see how we can line up our numbers, and sometimes that division of numbers and place value will help you better understand why we're starting from left to right and what number we're truly comparing against another, okay? All right, let's see now. We can try another number to compare. All right. All right, so we have a couple of numbers And again, if you're going to use the place value chart, start again from our left to right and take a look and compare the numbers that we have. We have a 0 for both numbers in our ones place, so we continue decimal place, got it, and we continue. Oh, but we get to the tens place for the first number, and I see that there are 2 digits here. But before we go any further past the tens place, we have to take a look and observe what we see in our tens place. We see a 3, and because these two numbers now, because we're going to be able to take a look, we're comparing what we have here. Again, this number is in our hundreds place. This number ends in our tens place. So we have to be able to compare using the same number out of a whole. Okay, so because this goes to hundredths, this also number has to go to hundredths by inserting that 0. Okay, now we can compare. Okay, I know that we took a look at this and we could automatically say that 4 is greater than 3. Okay, but what we're going to continue to work on is making sure that we are comparing those things that they have in common. Okay. The last picture I showed you were those 2 water bottles, 2 different sizes, but 2 unequal amounts proportion to the bottle of the size, okay? So just make sure that you are understanding that we need to be able to compare out of the same whole. If this is out of hundredths, 38 hundredths, it's not comparable to 4 tenths unless you find that thing that they have in common together, okay? All right, and we can write this out as 38 hundredths is less than 4 tenths. We can, oh, can't read that. So you can write it this way, as long as you're understanding that 4 tenths is also going to be equivalent to 40 hundredths. How do I know that though? This is where our fractions comes back, okay? We're very familiar and comfortable with finding our common denominators. So if I'm going to write this as a fraction, 38 hundredths, if I can say it, I can write it. There's my fraction, 38 hundredths right there. But this, take a look, is 4 tenths. I can't compare because they're out of 2 completely different wholes. You need 100 pieces to get to one whole. You need 10 pieces to get to one whole here. So I want to make sure that I get to 100 here also. So what do I need to do here to equal 100? 10 times what? 10 times 10, and you know the rule. Whatever you do with our denominator, we have to do with our numerator. So 10 times 10 is 100, and 4 times 10 would give you 40. 4 tenths is equivalent to 40 hundredths. It's really nice with decimals, with denominators of 10 and 100, because it's an easy transition from 10 to 100 because you're multiplying times 10. And that's how we just added that 0 because it became 10 times greater in that direction. Okay. Let's do a couple more. If you feel like I'm speaking too quickly or going over the material too quickly, you can always pause, rewind parts of the video to help you better understand what we're doing again, okay? All right, so I'm going to have 0.9. What does 0.9 say? 9 tenths. Nice job. Oops, wrong number. I'll adjust. All right. And what does 0.92 say? 92 hundredths. Doing the same thing. I need to make sure my water bottles are both the same size, okay? We have 9 tenths, 92 hundredths. Same thing. I can say it 9 tenths versus 92 hundredths. I need to make sure that I have that common denominator, and I also understand that I need to be able to have something that they have in common. So 92/100ths is going to stay the same, but I need to go ahead and continue to go from 10 to 100. In order to do that, I need to multiply 10 with my denominator, gets me to 100. Whatever I do down here, I have to do up here. So 9 times 10 also would give me 90. And because now my equivalent fraction for 9/10 is 90/100ths, I'm just going to cross this off so I know I'm not doing anything with that right now. So now I'm comparing these two fractions, 90/100ths. Oh, common denominator, 92/100ths. Now which comparison symbol would I insert here? 90/100ths is less than 92/100ths. Okay? And if you want to go so far as to show an understanding that you would put that 0 there because you would create that 10 times 10 greater. Okay, that 0, you don't just add a 0, it becomes 10 times greater with that. All right. All right, so today's focus was making sure that we're understanding how to compare decimals using using greater than, less than, or equal to symbols. If there's anything that you need to review, go back and rewind the video and watch it as many times as you need to, but also feel free to ask questions. We're here for you to ask questions and to help support you with anything that you need support with, okay? So have fun, work hard, do your best, and simply try, okay? Have a great day. I'll see you guys later. I miss you, Amber.